Okay, so thank you so much for being here with us today at Global Compact. So we have Gonçalo, who's the lead manager of Hub Azul, Portugal, at Fórum Oceano. And we have Susanne, founder and CEO of Ocean Community, very proudly. And we're here today to talk a little bit about blue tech, blue innovation, blue economy, blue conservation as well. So maybe first you can share, I'll start with Gonçalo, a little bit of what you do at Fórum Oceano, and then follow with Susanne as well. Wonderful.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and pleasure to be here speaking with Susanne. We've known each other for, I don't know, 5 years now?
Since I founded Ocean Community, yeah.
So Fórum Oceano, we are the Portuguese Blue Cluster. We represent now 170 members from startups, SMEs, big corporates, banks, investors, R&D centers, universities, so all the municipalities, so many different types, and in many different areas of blue economy, from the seafood value chain, aquaculture, blue biotech, ports and shipping, robotics, and many others. So we for the past year or 2 years, we've been following the Blue Invest, let's call it taxonomy, that divides blue economy in 10 different sectors. And so we are looking to our cluster through that lens of the 10 different sectors. And so we represent that very wide community in Portugal. What I'm doing at Fórum Oceano, I'm leading one of our largest projects, Hub Azul. It's a European funded project from the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, the COVID funds that Europe kindly gave to countries to recover. It's a €100 million project in total to set up 7 innovation hubs and a school, all focused in blue economy. So each of these hubs is located in a port in mainland Portugal. So we have 2 in Leixões, 1 in Aveiro, 1 in Peniche, 1 in Oeiras, 1 in Lisbon, and 1 in Olhão. They're all very different. You have from the typical startup hub with shared office space, shared labs, to infrastructures to test offshore technologies like you have in Leixões. That is being built a very large ocean basin to test floating offshore platforms or aquaculture cages and stuff like that. So all of these projects are being built right now. So they're all under construction or being under tender right now. And what we are doing at Fórum Oceano is creating the network between all of these different hubs so that they don't work autonomously or isolated, and they work in a network. So what we're doing is we're building the business model, the governance model of all of this, plus obviously creating an image, communicating, doing all the business development, internationalization, and we will start very shortly to promote some initiatives to develop the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem, ideation initiatives, acceleration, venture building, to develop the Portuguese blue economy innovation ecosystem to, let's call it, create a funnel or a deal flow that will use these hubs.
Until how long that project?
So the project, the building project is until the end of next year, end of 2025. So hopefully we'll start in operations early 26.
That is incredible.
Yes, it's quite a big project with many different entities involved. There's 20-something entities.
Very challenging.
It is very challenging.
Thank you. Susanne, would you like to talk a little bit about our city?
Yes, thank you so much, and good to see you again, Gonçalo, as always. Yes, and thank you for this invitation. I'm Swedish by origin, struggling with the Portuguese. It's muito difícil para mí, sou sueca. But I will get there one day. I'll hack the code. I came from Sweden to Portugal 5 years ago. And I come in from business and IT, so I have double masters. I'm not from the marine space or a marine scientist by background. I think it's important to make that to comment on that, because when I founded Ocean Community, when I came to Portugal, this is obviously an ocean nation and fantastic PhD, brilliant minds, also in the blue bio space. However, coming from a really venture or unicorn breeder like Sweden, I try to tap into and figure out what can I do to add something to this amazing ecosystem. And I think we agree that there is a challenge here for getting all that science and tech out from the lab into market. So propelling lab to market or lab to impact is what we're hoping to do. Ocean Community is as the legal entity is set up, it's a non-profit associação. It's rooted in Portugal with global reach. We have about 7,000 followers on social media. We have at least 38 countries represented, and we really want for people who are ocean curious to have a platform where they connect, learn, and innovate. And knowledge is the foundation for innovation. So we focus a lot on our learning programs, and then we also have innovation program. And our global innovation challenge, the first year, COVID hit, but 2020, we, out of the, I think, 60 applications, we selected 3 finalists, and we have been doing that for the first 3 years, but this year we added a twist. So now we're running an award accelerator with 6 startups in it, and I'm happy to say that 2 are from Portugal. 1 is from India, 1 is from Germany, 1 is from Switzerland, 1 is from Turkey, 2 from Portugal. Water purification and aquaponics solutions. And from Ocean Community then, so again, what I have seen, and this has been a good onboarding for me, and again, Gonçalo, I think you were one of the first mentors on the first
for the winning startup.
On the baby version of the Ocean Community Challenge, and thank you for that.
Reshore, I think.
Yeah, Reshore, exactly, yeah. So they have a solution where they develop a shore protecting construction in ocean-friendly materials that also then can act as nurseries and the house for ocean habitat. So it was a really cool solution. But this year, then again, we are aiming at taking these startups further. Ocean Community is a part of a global coalition called 1000 Ocean Startup Coalition. And it is ESO, so Entrepreneur Supporting Organizations. It's a part of what Fórum Oceano do, but I would say a smaller part. So the Entrepreneur Supporting Organizations, we are the accelerators, the incubators, active with programming. And what's really good to see in this space that we are working very much now together, understanding that upstream where we are, so founders and solutions, they have a really tough time finding investments. And the blue VCs and I would call them traditional investors, they are still working a logic based on the old verticals. And there is a movement, but we need to definitely encourage much more of, I would say, modern finance instruments with blended finance that actually looks at the value of this natural capital asset and blue carbon, and the traditional investment models don't work. High capex, very, very long R&D cycles. But back to Ocean Community. So what we're doing now is we have a program for ocean ambassadors. We are in the universities here in Portugal. We're doing quite well. The ocean ambassadors, master students, they act as the bridge, the point of contact to both get the inspiration, hopefully, and ocean awareness into the universities, encouraging also some of these researchers to actually translate their tech into solutions and impact. But we also saw that there's an additional gap. So we are taking it one step further now from Ocean Community. I founded an entity here, also Portuguese, Infuse Blue, with a co-founder from Los Angeles, Port Los Angeles, Alta. She heads up Great Theory, Ann Carpenter. And Infuse Blue is then becoming a member of Fórum Oceano, whereas Ocean Community, we're a proud member of Blue Bio Alliance. So this ecosystem that we're talking about, it's quite complex, but it's also the opportunity here. Yeah. It's amazing how it's buzzing and busy. So with that, we will be, we already have an incubator license. We want to act as a global landing pad for international startups, so we can leverage global best practices. Because in some spaces in Portugal, there is a lot of brilliant minds. In others, it's kind of like, I would say, a vacuum. And this is the way it is across the planet, right? Nations are unique.
Yes.
We have different histories. So if we really want to bring in leading tech from the blue tech space, we need to look at leading countries in AI like Canada. They're doing a lot in, I would say, ocean, smart ocean and sensors. And I know Gonçalo is on board because we're having those conversations. So we have we're talking to 2 Canadian startups, one that wants to come here with a wave power energy solution, and we've been talking about this one, Onica, and it means that we could, in this ecosystem, contribute to bringing startups that can world-class tech, merging and infusing together with all the brilliant Portuguese mindsets, and then we can actually grow here, build here, but then scale out across Portugal and beyond. Because it's one world, one ocean, one community. Maybe I'll end there then.
No.
One world, one ocean, one community. So
you'll be filling up a very important gap, I would say.
yes, I hope so. Yes, I hope so. And complementing what exists. Because we talk about this, there are not, I would say there's Blue Bio Accelerator, and I know they are discussing how to continuing forward that accelerator. When that was launched, it was by 2 very professional, wealthy foundations, but they don't typically run accelerators. But we're so happy that they started that, because otherwise there wouldn't have been an accelerator here. But I think now we are together discussing how to work stronger with our different hats on.
So I will actually pick up on that perfect sentence, one ocean, because one of the things that I find that I struggle the most when I approach people regarding this theme, and that's one of the reasons I find that it's so hard for the ocean to be considered when we talk about climate change and other solutions, is that I feel that people and feel that the ocean belongs to everyone and to no one at the same time. I don't know what your perspective is, because you are way more into depth and you have a lot of connections with a multitude of sectors and different know-how. But do you think that might be the reason why it's being so hard to put the ocean, especially in Portugal, considering what we have regarding?
Well, I think there are several layers to that conversation. So I think one of the layers is what you don't see, you don't consider, and you don't value. And the ocean, you see it, you go to the beach, you see it, the ocean and the beach, but you don't have a concrete idea of how vast the ocean is, and you just see the surface. You don't see what's underneath. So people, the general public, don't really consider the ocean as something relevant. The other thing is science. There is a lot of science about the ocean, but it's a very complex medium. To explore the ocean is probably more complex than to explore the space. It's a very inhospitable environment. There's waters, there's salt, there's pressure, there's visibility, there's lack of communication. So it's very, very complex. So you don't know a lot of things about the ocean. And it's a very expensive world to do anything. And then Susanne was approaching that. It's a very high capex world to innovate, to test, to experiment any technology, even if it's at the surface. You don't need to go 5,000 meters depth. Even at the surface, it's very, very expensive. So there's a lot of barriers to enter that space. You put another layer about Portugal. So we're always talking about the ocean, Mar Português. We're all ocean. We've been in the discoveries. We've discovered all the ocean. Yes, I think we at the moment where either we make the ocean a reality for Portugal, or we just better forget it because we're too late. I do feel, and being very honest, that we are actually making strides in that direction, and very concrete strides, and with an impact and with concrete results. I feel that the blue space, the ocean space in Portugal, is completely different than it was 10 years ago. Nothing, and 5 years ago probably.
Yes.
You have that vision.
Yes.
So 5 years ago, yes, there was a lot of talk about the ocean, but there were no concrete initiatives, or there were R&D centers, universities, but there were very few startups, very few accelerators. I would say 5 years ago there was no investors in the space in Portugal,
No.
and nowadays it's completely different. We still have a very long road to go, but I do feel that we have the momentum right now in that direction. It is happening, but we just need to keep that momentum. We do need to keep it.
I agree with everything Gonçalo says. It's really good.
5
We
years,
share.
you've seen change?
I have seen definitely lots of change, and I agree. I also want to start with Portugal saying, in all fairness, and Portugal has an amazing opportunity. I am hyper optimistic. This is the point in time. This is when we do this. So we have the launch pad is it could not be better. Having said that, I agree also, but it's not only Portugal, the whole planet. So what happened in this situation? So scientists is very complex, right? So they kept researching, and meanwhile, 80% of the biomass in the ocean was gone due to toxification, overfishing, and of course the climate change as well. The ocean is the biggest ally against climate change, but COP didn't talk about ocean. I think 2020, the word was not spoken. Although 6% or something of excess heat is absorbed by the ocean, complex processes then, acidification, microlayer is being really, really destroyed. But this is very complex for all of us to understand in society. When I started Ocean Community, it was because I was curious, and I have double masters, but I didn't really understand. So the point with that, and by the way, SDG 40 we know is like not even 2% of all the investments in the SDGs goes to life underwater. So Gonçalo has a huge point. It's really, so scientists fail to translate these messages into the business space. We need entrepreneurs to meet the innovators. And that's where I think the gap is, and that's where we want to focus. I also want to pick up on what you said. Yes, it's harsh out there. It's tough. The high seas, though, this is a trick, right? I was in New York, and I was happy to be invited into the UN building when the High Seas Treaty was signed by the first countries. It was during the New York Climate Week last year. However, the high seas are yet, and there's still ratification going on. These processes are slow, so our politicians need to wake up and speed up. That is really clear. Meanwhile, when we look at the data from our human trajectory into the ocean, we have linear economy. We pull resources. We overfish still. We pollute, right? We pull also already deep sea minerals. Our mining is happening, although at a small scale, so let's see if we can contain it. But where the money was, which makes me really concerned, billions and billions are still being pushed into fossil fuel subsidies as we speak. It's incredible how oil addicted we are. So who could afford to go out there first? Well, of course, offshore oil and gas, right? Because they had the money, so they went out there. And this is where I feel that we have to catch up now with a much more 360 perspective on those stakeholders, all of us in the ocean. And also to wrap it, to make it maybe more understandable. So where we came from, and there is positive evolution here, blue economy was the definition. We talked about blue economy, but when we looked at all those activities, that was offshore oil and gas. It included all kinds of trawl fishing, destructive practices. And we have to be honest about that. The blue economy is not a fun, sustainable economy. It's a very shitty economy to a large degree. Then we all agreed and we started the evolution, right, with all our entities talking about, so what about the sustainable blue economy? Well, then we said that those are the practices where we exclude offshore oil and gas, we exclude deep sea mining, right, because we know these practices are not safe, they're harmful to the ocean. Then we ended up with sustainable blue economy and investment frameworks for that. However, the good thing now, and coalitions like 1000 Ocean Star Coalition, 48 members, with I think we are 12 VCs in the coalition too. And we have really intense conversations about those, but we now, all of us have united around the third definition. Because sustain, what does that mean? Keep it as is. No, because the acidification of the ocean it's horrific, and our coral reefs are dying, and the fish stocks are reducing. So now we're talking about regenerative blue economy, meaning it's sustainable blue economy, but we also support those practices where we also can have aquaculture practices or fishery practices. That's when you fish plants or fish from the ocean is called fisheries. And aquaculture is plants or fish cultivated on land. It's a bit confusing. You think fisheries is fish.
Yeah.
But it's also how we actually harvest alternative protein for the ocean. And when we look at those practices now, I'm happy to say that there are more and more good financial models where we see that if we introduce regenerative practices, of course, island nations, more fish, right? Shore protection from mangrove forests or other blue carbon reintroductions, shoreline protection, more fish stock, more fish to fish, and it's just a positive cycle.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, but yeah, so we're on the best ever possible position, so we have to act now. And maybe I just want to underline it, but everyone understands this is the complexity of the ocean too. We have to save the ocean with solutions because this is about our survival. The oxygen produced, 3 billion people rely on fish as the main source of protein. So we have a good reason for really being more respectful to the ocean. But meanwhile, we both agree that we can't just be conserving or preserving because the terrestrial space, it's not a solution if we want to have a happy and healthy life on Earth so much longer. We have to find a good regenerative way to work also with the economy of the ocean.
Well, that is actually an amazing introduction to my next question, which was going to be...
Sorry.
No, it was perfect. Thank you so much. Because I was wondering, and we actually talked a little bit about this, me and Gonçalo, because how hard or not it is to conciliate ocean conservation and regeneration, which is already needed in a lot of places, including Portugal, with the ocean as a market opportunity. And because sometimes, yes, we think about, of course, we have brilliant minds that come up with brilliant ideas that connect technology and innovation with something that we never thought about in the first place, and that will help both regenerate and conserve the ocean and be profitable, which is the aim of all businesses. But how doable is this, in your opinion? So I'll start maybe with you, Gonçalo. It's a hard one, I think.
It is and it's not. I think conservation is a complex word in our world. It is connected with a lot of things that I personally feel that do not make a lot of sense. It's connected with don't touch and let it be like that, and that is wrong.
That is the process.
In a way,
I agree.
exactly what Susanne said, that a lot of the ecosystems need to be regenerated. That's part of the problem. So you need to have an intervention in that ecosystem, and that intervention has an economic value that can be captured in financial models like blue carbon and stuff like that. They are still, I would say, very fragile models, but you start having those, and blue bonds. So you do have some instruments to foster those types of interventions. The other look is you need to have some way to, and another word that has a very bad connotation, explore the ocean in a way that is sustainable and that regenerates the ecosystems. Aquaculture, for example, it's a very bad sector that nobody likes aquaculture because it's, I don't know, but it's very important to reduce wild fish catch. It's very important to produce protein that is much less carbon intensive than protein that's produced on land. So there's a lot of value in aquaculture. For example, offshore renewables. Also a very bad word. Nobody likes offshore renewables because you're putting platforms in the ocean. But you do need to produce clean energy. And it's either fossil fuels or putting solar panels or cutting forests to put solar panels, or maybe an option could be offshore renewables. So there's a lot of trade-offs in all of this. So I think we need to be balanced. We need to have profound conversations, open conversations, and not be polarized in conservation versus exploration or economy versus ecosystem, because there are very profitable business models that promote regeneration and conservation. There are MPAs that are very successful in having blue bonds or blue carbon credits. There are startups that work in conservation. You talked about Reshore. Reshore, it's a very tiny example of a startup that can work in promoting an ecosystem. There's e-concrete. They create concrete for ports that promotes ecosystem to be created in those spaces. So there are many different examples of startups that have a business model that promotes environment. The other thing is the investment community is very much aligned with impact metrics nowadays. One example is the European investment funds. They are a fund of funds. They invest in local, let's call it local funds. Some of the funds in Portugal have investments from EIF, and EIF has a very stringent impact framework for investing in startups. So any startup that has investment from a VC fund that has investment from EIF needs to comply with impact metrics. So that's the way to, let's call it, trickle down impact in the startup ecosystem. And if you see the investments in these sectors, for example, in the ecosystem regeneration wide sector, it was, I would say, 10 years ago on the million or less than a million VC investment. Nowadays, it's 100 to 200 million a year. So it has grown exponentially.
And it's a way to keep companies accountable for what's...
And it's a way to keep companies accountable for an impact metric and an impact focus on their business model.
Yeah, so I agree. That's really looking at how we get true impact, I think, is definitely we need to involve existing industries, because we have to also remember, while this blue regenerative economy is new, when you look at the sub-verticals, they are not new. So as Gonçalo is mentioning, so blue renewable energy I'm a passionate fan of. I don't really like offshore wind because it's using the ocean as a parking lot for wind turbines, but that's my personal reflection. I still love that much more than I love oil. So, but wave energy, tidal energy, we have here in Portugal Core Power, which is a Swedish company by origin and deployed in Portugal. So my heart is double beating for that. And wave energy, I believe, has a huge potential, and there are some very promising other solutions as well. Tidal energy from Netherlands, I have two startups I'm talking with who really want to come down and test their tidal wave solutions here. So we're hoping that we can come to that point where Portugal also opens up our resources for, as Gonçalo was touching on, the testing. I also want to step back to, okay, so I don't have any more money because I have been spending my money. I am bootstrapping. I am not used to the public funding. I came from another country that isn't, so I spent my money 4 years on what we're doing here. But before that, I have 4 angel investments, and they're all impact startups, but no blue. But I have a food tech, or really, and a climate tech. So I can say from where I sit that there's still a lot to do with the investors, because they need education, but so do all the stakeholders, because these funds, they get funds, but then they underinvest because they look, of course, from their investment theses and instruments, and they evaluate investments, and that means that, again, very much of the early solutions that we believe will be extremely impactful and viable, they never get the chance to bridge over to the scale that they need to have to become interesting for a VC. And I think this is something that we will have to continue working on. But having said that, so the new investment models are quite nascent still with blended finance, or there's this different capital natural asset models. You heard about blue bonds and so forth. But the one I do believe in, just as you're mentioning, is actually carbon credits. Why? Because now at least we have regulation and we're pushing for the bottom line. So CSRD with CO2 emissions on the bottom line. Carbon credits, right? Voila. So what happens when larger companies, if we sort of also educate and get the word out, that they understand that they can actually balance, because they have quite there's natural capital environmental risk, right? And these carbon credits from the ocean, investing in mangrove forests or seaweed beds, or that also is the foundation for more regenerative ecosystems, shoreline protection, CO2, of course, sequestration, we know that they absorb CO2. Yes. That's where you can get companies interested. And I'll give one good example, and now I'm Swedish, so it doesn't sound strange. I'm giving IKEA as an example. What happens when you get the companies engaged and understanding this language? One big area in the blue economy is, of course, shipping. Everything you touch, feel, basically has in some form been on a ship. So everyone, we're all a part of needing to not only conserve but use this beautiful blue space in a good way. So IKEA is a huge shipper, right? They're a huge shipper. But they are, and Sweden has that tradition, so forward-leaning, enterprises in Sweden are forward-leaning, sometimes more than the governments are. Forward-leaning in innovation, also capturing them, what's going to happen, what can we do then to transform, entrepreneurship or transform. Applying blue tech, leveraging blue tech across industry verticals is a huge potential. So IKEA, they are a part of a group where they actually, big shipping clients are pushing for decarbonization of shipping. And IKEA has taken it quite far, and there's a rating and there's a score and there's points. So some really large, I don't think we have Amazon there yet, they should join. I mean, all these big enterprises. So in IKEA's case, they are leading the score. And what they're doing is quite radical. They're telling AP Møller Mærsk, they're telling the big shipping companies, and I don't know, if we have the 10 top, we probably cover 98% of all the shipping.
Bravo.
I mean, there are quite few big ones. Yeah. They're just saying that you have to have a plan for emission reduction. We're renegotiating our contracts with you. Guess what happens then? Just as all was said way back in the past, no, we cannot, or the emissions, it's impossible, catalytic solutions for that, it's impossible. California passed the law, and Volvo was like 3 weeks later, oh, of course we can do this. So I can make fun of the Swedish companies too. But this is a really powerful, I believe, story. So when that happens, Cargill, huge, right, on feed, animal feed, big enterprise. We have one startup in our cohort now, Kirimis from Switzerland, fish-free fish feed. They take dry farming waste, fermentation process, and instead of fishing fish to feed aquaculture farms, salmon farms in Norway, Baltic Sea is being emptied of herring, and the EU fishery ministers, unbelievably, behind locked doors, made a decision now to increase the fishing quotas with 105%. All the scientists around the Baltic Sea, and we're just saying, what? But okay, so, but if you take Cargill, and then you go to them, and you show them this is a great business opportunity, then things start to happen. And also they can then start to talk to people like us, because consumer power is still out there. But I would like to wrap back to Ocean Community. We see that there's just a huge knowledge gap. And people want to do good. They don't always know how.
Yes.
But if we tell them that if you use these sunscreen products, you're going to kill the reefs. You tell the surfers this, they won't use it. But if they're not told, then how would you know? So I really believe that people want to do good, but we have to really educate at all levels.
Yeah. Social literacy is very important.
Yeah. But businesses, I believe in them so much, and there's so much happening out there right now. And we need to get our regulatory bodies on
Yeah,
board.
let me just add on something that you mentioned. So decarbonization of shipping.
Yes.
It is, I would say, one of the 2, 3 hot topics right now. There is a lot of pressure from the clients industry, the shippers, but there is a lot of pressure from regulation. EU, IMO, they emitted a lot of regulation regarding emission of the shipping companies. It is very hard to comply. It is a very complex problem.
Yeah, the bunkering.
Even with all of the pressure from many different sides, it is a very complex problem to solve.
Yes.
And it's a problem that will need to be solved in a long stretch of time. For you to know, a ship when it's built is built to last for 25, 30, 35 years. So anything that was built 2, 3 years ago without considering decarbonization will be around in the next 20 years at least. So you have to work in many different areas. You have to work in refit, refurbishing the ships and the propulsion engines of the ships that exist right now to make them less carbon intensive. You need to work in efficiency and a lot of digital technologies to improve route technology, for example, or improve the speeds of the ships to reduce the consumption of energy. Or there's a lot of innovation right now in rigid sails. So we're going back to sailing even in large container ships. So that's a way to reduce emissions. And then there's new fuels, green fuels. There's a lot of talk about methanol, ammonia, LNG, green LNG. And the issue is there are different technologies and fuels. There's no consensus, and there will be no consensus. We will live in a world that will have to deal with a mix of different fuels. And that's a very different world for the shipping and ports industry. And that's a world that will need a lot of investments, both in the ships and in the ports that will take the ships and that will refuel the ships. So it is, and it's a very infrastructure heavy type of change. So there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of regulation, there's a lot of pressure from industry and from the consumers, but it is a very complex world. And even the new fuels, the technology is still not quite there yet. So I guess for the next 5 years, we'll have to live on efficiency measures, more digital technologies, rigid sails, for example, or any other technology that we can introduce in a ship to reduce the emissions. New fuels, it's something that I would say will start seriously coming in the market in the next 5, 10 years.
And I so agree with you, and I want to underline, I think that's why IKEA is not saying we are tearing up the contracts and renegotiating now, but they are looking at, is there a plan for emission reduction? Because as Gonçalo was saying, there's a timeline. I worked 11 years for an airline, and then I worked for DHL, which is, I had 9 countries, and it's a networked organization, but despite 9 countries, 1,000 employees, everyone was working in a network with the same roles, and the hub and spoke was communicating with each other and in correspondence. So this is, of course, why we talk about these green shipping corridors, to start to get ports, big ports, to sort of point to point start to align, because the bunkering, the ships now, fossil fuel driven.
Yes.
You can't go into port
And say
I want something that's more green and clean.
But it is the conversation
really,
that's happening right now in the ports and shipping world. It is the conversation.
I have a huge respect for that sector, really. It's,
But I think that really demonstrates, first of all, the power that also here at the UN Global Compact we believe in, that is how businesses can push sometimes more than governments, or the same as governments can, the same as the finance world can. Because if a very big, like IKEA, if it needs or if it's aware of the impacts, and if it makes some sort of pressure in a way that, look, at least we need to know what we're doing. At least we need to improve, because we also have our own targets regarding sustainability and our projects, and we cannot be so everything makes it this whole spin and move and move forward, I believe. So, and that's very important. I'm not saying it's easy.
That's hard. But that's why we're also in Ocean Community. So what we're trying to do, we're a non-profit again, but now we have this time a category partner program. So what we want to do for the innovation categories that we have learning around and this challenge around, like blue food, blue transportation, blue energy, blue biotechnology, and so forth. We're trying to attract then enterprises to be category partners. Meaning, and if you look then at IKEA, they could also, there are other parts there, right? So you have the blue biotechnology. So much plastic used for wrapping, furniture, stuffing, microplastic, everything that's happening there. They could also decide to start to invest in exchange for those biopolymer-based products that we're starting to see the light in the market. But trying to get also companies, existing enterprises, to pay attention to becoming ocean-friendly brands. That's what it's all about. We could get Coca-Cola in there for sort of water management, blue water, make them understand that right now I saw a really good article about it. They're not producing water, they're producing plastic bottles. I love that sort of twist to it. If we can push and promote Nestle, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, who are making billions in profit, to reinvest part of it into biodegradable plastic bottles instead, that would be really good. And consumer power, the more we learn about this, I think the more also consumers will in a good way start to move companies in the right direction.
Yeah, let me pick up on something that you said before. You said people want to do good. I totally agree. And I think as a consumer, we want to do good. As an employee, we want to do good. As an investor, we want to do good. As a policy maker, we want to do good. But we also have incentives, and we also have systems where we are integrated. And sometimes those incentives and those systems work against our own will to do good. And so we need sometimes to adapt to go after that incentive. For example, if it's better for my salary to do something that's not so good, maybe I'll take a decision that's not so good. But if the incentive is aligned, then everything is aligned. And I believe that in the corporate world, a lot of the incentives have started being aligned with sustainability, with SDGs, with ESG. And I think that movement is very, very, very strong. To actually have an impact in the world and to actually change the paradigm that we have been living in the past 50, 100 years, obviously regulation is important. It is very important, but it is the power of the economy, the companies, that is the most impactful. And when you start aligning investment frameworks, when you start aligning ESG metrics with the change that you need to do, that's when you start having an impact. And that's what we have seen in the past, I'd say 10 years. And nowadays, I would say in most large sectors, one of the top 3 topics in the board's room agendas is ESG, is sustainability. And I think that's a very big change. And I think that will create an impact. Even if all the politics in the world is upside down right now, and even if we're all doubting that we'll have the right regulations, I think the power of companies and the power of consumers and investors will make it move forward in the right direction.
Let me add something that actually I think to this topic, because we're here at Web Summit, right? And this is also so important. How do we leverage tech? And seeing that as really one good reason why I'm optimistic as well. With what we're discussing here, we need data, because facts speak louder than words, right? And the more of this knowledge transfer that we can substantiate with data, the better. And this is something that has been missing. Like this big blue, we didn't know so much, but we're starting to see a lot of, I would say, cool startups. And also for the audience here, a lot of these brilliant minds could get engaged because we need the more data-driven insights. So this is really an opportunity for tech-savvy people to get into the game, because we're talking about smart ocean and AI is a super buzzy word still, but we all like to toss around with it, right? But really, anyone who works with how to capture data with sensors, the hardware, how to qualify the data, right? And how to then also use it for predictive analysis or of course machine learning, turning into AI learning system, great. But the more we can get people engaged also in this space, the more data we can present, and all these industries and regulatories, they cannot, like the fishery ministers, hide behind closed doors so much longer and make these decisions. We will have citizen power saying, wait, what data were you basing your decisions on? Oh, you knew that you would make yet another species extinct and you did not pay attention to the data. But data, let me give another example. So this, if you capture space data and ocean data, a super cool, I would say, combination space for those who are passionate about that. Satellite data can give so much for the ocean space, and it's starting to emerge. We see a lot of startups now, early ones, that are trying to capture space data and translating that into something that is important for us to understand when we continue with our journey into the blue. And I know one business case I looked at, if you combine like a column, an Excel column from the ocean floor up to space, you capture the data there and you start to intelligently package it. I worked for an airline for 11 years after my MBA. So traffic control, so reducing then the CO2 emissions. Well, if you actually capture that data and you start to look at currents, heat waves, storms, even the, because there are of course currents depending on what the ocean floor looks like, then you can, according to these business cases, reduce, Gonçalo was pointing at it, significantly the emissions. So this is a really hyper cool space to be in. And there's so much we can use this data for, not only for tsunami warning systems, but for where can we then launch our aquaculture farms without them being destructive for the ecosystem and all that. So it's it's a really, really, really cool space to be.
Let me add on that. So data is a very interesting conversation in the ocean space. The European Commission launched a few months ago a very interesting initiative called EDITO. It's a European digital twin for the oceans. It is open source and the wide public can use it. And it's, I would say, very, very interesting tool to use data in the ocean space. Also at Fórum Oceano, we're leading a project in Portugal that's called Portugal Blue Digital Hub to promote digitalization of SMEs and public agencies in this blue space. And one of the work packages that we're working with is to create a one data source for all the data from the ocean, from scientific data to social data, economic data, etc. So I think that will be also a very interesting tool. And you were talking about satellites as well. ESA, European Space Agency, started to make a move towards maritime. They're creating a maritime task force, and they're interested in use cases, business cases, to use their data in maritime use cases. And I think that's a very interesting move, and it's a very good complement for data that we have in sensors in the ocean, either in buoys or ROVs or other types of sensors that we are deploying very much in the ocean. So that will be very interesting to have those two sources of data from satellite and from sensors in situ.
And all of this, I think, in bundle, there are so many serious actors out there in this economy that definitely want these tools. And if we start to deploy them wisely, we can also get rid of those few, but still, I would say that should be blacklisted out there, because we can already now see also, I talk about the Baltic Sea. I mean, the mother of the ocean is the Atlantic, I love her. But the Baltic Sea is a little cousin in deep trouble. And there's a lot of data there showing already which ships move into the Baltic Sea, dump their garbage and move out. But we don't, I would say also government bodies or control systems, legislations that can actually go after them. But we can already see who they are. And I look forward to a world where we can say that we see all the good companies, the shipping companies, the ports, the fisheries that are the good ones. They can continue
to self-regulate and help.
Yes, and they can thrive. And but we get rid of the ones that are. But now we can see them. That's the good point here. And we couldn't in the past, but we can see them.
Well, I'm very happy that we kind of were able to end this in a very positive note, I think, with a lot of good examples and what we can look forward to. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here,
Thank
for
you.
sharing what you do, what you have been doing, which I personally appreciate, as Global Compact also appreciate, and look forward to speak to you very soon. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you.